Owen's timeline is not the study and interpretation of sacred tales or fables of a culture, but a factual account about a Barbadian who was born on Monday, October 17th, 1949, and christened Owen Seymour Arthur. Mr. Arthur was born into working class parents, namely Frank Arthur, a carpenter and shopkeeper, and Iretha Doll Roach, an agricultural worker in the parish of St. Peter. He became a member of Parliament for the said parish, which is one of 11 parishes in the Caribbean island country of Barbados. He rose from humble beginnings to the status of prominence. It is noted that during this time period that a number of famous people were born. These include Bill Hudson, a musician and actor in Portland, Oregon, Timothy Bottoms in Santa Barbara, and Owen Seymour Arthur, the 5th Prime Minister of Barbados in Barbados. This story is staged within the precincts of time, the geographical territory of the Caribbean, Europe, and North America. This setting highlights the fact that globalization has increased incidence of interactions between people. Firms with diverse backgrounds include customs, culture, conventions, and social norms. Owen's timeline features race, ethnicity, and culture of a particular group of people, encompassing language, religion, cuisine, social habits, music, and arts, are influenced subtly by different theories and time, which is the underpinning component of this conversation. Further, Sir Isaac Newton's third law theory and Ralph Linton's theory on culture also impacts this story. The main character of this story, as far as I am aware from my research, is not a prophet nor clairvoyant, but would have made predictions based on his knowledge and training as an economist and as a practitioner between the time 1981 to 1983, when he would have acquired experience and knowledge when he worked for Barbados's Ministry of Finance and Planning, and would have ensued economic forecasting, which involves the building of statistical models with inputs of several key variables or indicators, typically in an attempt to come up with a future gross domestic product growth rate. Moreover, I am fairly certain that in his forecasting, in his research, somewhere in his thoughts, he may have juxtaposed the mood of the economic landscape which existed in 1949, the said year he was born, as opposed to this era, because in 1949 a loaf of bread costs 13 cents on average, while milk costs 84 cents per gallon. The average annual salary in 1949 was between $2,950 and $3,600, and the minimum wage was 40 cents per hour. The U.S. unemployment rate was 6.6%, and its GDP growth was 0.6%. Moreover, primary economic indicators include inflation, interest rates, industrial production, consumer confidence, worker productivity, retail sales, and unemployment rate. All things being equal in the scheme of things, it is logical, therefore, to also suggest that within Owen's timeline, His cognition, logically speaking, studying history helped him understand and grapple with complex questions and dilemmas, such as in January 2020, especially when he was appointed as chairman of regional airline Liat to supervise its financial recovery. He had been a staunch supporter of Liat during his premiership by examining how the past has shaped and continues to shape global, national, and local relationships between societies and people. In his capacity as a social science practitioner, he would have discovered that this discipline, in its broadest sense, is the study of society and the manner in which people behave and influence the world around us. Usually, the same is included within the social sciences are cultural or social anthropology, sociology, psychology, political science, and economics. To add to this conversation, Omar Davies, a former member of Parliament for St. Andrew, Southern and former Minister of Finance and Planning, made the telling point that Mr. Arthur was a deep thinker on issues of development and public policy and was a committed regionalist who saw the need for pooling resources and ideas to solve the deep and intractable problems bequeathed to us by history and had unwavering commitment to regional integration with the recognition of his pivotal and contribution to the formation of the CARICOM, Single Market and Economy. Mr. Arthur was regarded to his multifaceted contributions to the strengthening of Caribbean integration and regionalism. His body of work, by which he sought to give concrete form to concepts of regional integration, remains a testimony to the value of his contributions as a Caribbean leader. Mr. Arthur was deeply immersed in all facets of Jamaican society and culture. What I extrapolated from researching Owen's timeline activated my cognition into thinking that Ralph Linton's theory on culture was seemingly mirrored in this story. Within the context of culture, it appears that throughout Owen's timeline that the main character of this story would have been collecting ideas and habits which he would have learnt in the pursuance of knowledge that led him to learning in a non-systematic format combined with academics, which became the formalized and systematic approach to his education within the precincts of All Saints Boys School, Coleridge and Parry Boys School located in St. Peter, and Harrison College located in the parish of St. Michael. On the completion of a post-secondary degree in economics and history and a master's in social sciences from the University of the West Indies and K-Phil Mona campuses. During his academic tenure, as well as working in Jamaica in 1973 as a research assistant at the university and as an assistant economic planner with the government's National Planning Agency. In this space, he was promoted to Chief Economic Planner within 5 years. Further, it should be noted, within the Owens timeline, he exchanged marriage vows in 1978 to Beverly Arthur. However, the couple was divorced in 2000. In 1983, Owen Seymour Arthur's political career began when he was appointed to the Senate of Barbados. In 1984, he won a by-election to the House of Assembly for the constituency of St. Peter and became a member of the governing Barbados Labour Party after he defeated the Democratic Labour Party's candidate, Sybil Leacock. In 1985, he was appointed to be Parliamentary Secretary at the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, a position he held until 1986. In the May 1986 elections, the BLP was defeated by the Democratic Labour Party. Although Arthur retained his seat, he contemplated leaving politics and, to that end, took a position as a part-time lecturer in UWI's Department of Management Studies. Later that year, where he served concurrently as a part-time lecturer in management at UWI KPhil until he was chosen to be the leader of the Barbados Labour Party in 1993, which was founded on the 31st of March 1938 at the home of James Martineau. The BLP first participated in general elections in 1940. In 1993, Mr. Arthur was appointed the parliamentary opposition leader. In 1994, Owen Arthur became the Prime Minister as leader of the Barbados Labour Party, and upon his party's decisive victory in the September 1994 elections, he became Prime Minister. In September 1994, the Labour Party won the general elections, making Arthur Prime Minister. He also acted as Minister of National Security, Minister of Finance, and Minister of Information, and appointed 4 female ministers, including all 3 female BLP MPs. In the 1994 election campaign, Owen Arthur, an economist elected in 1993 to head the BLP, promised to build a modern, technologically dynamic economy, created jobs, and restored investor confidence. The BLP won 19 seats, the DLP 8, and the New Democratic Party, a disaffected offshoot of the DLP formed in 1989, won 1 seat. The youngest of the 4 29-year-old Mia Motley eventually succeeded him as party leader in 2008 and was elected Prime Minister in 2018. Arthur instituted economic reforms that cut unemployment from more than 20% in 1994 to just over 9% in 2000. His administration boosted the agriculture and tourism industries and retained power with the BLP's landslide victories in the 1999 and 2003 elections. In 1995, Arthur devised the formation of a Parliamentary Law Reform Commission led by Sir Henry de Boulay Ford, K.A., Q.C., M.A., LL.M., to advise on constitutional and institutional reform of Barbados's government. In 1995, Arthur was appointed a Privy Councillor, giving him the title of Right Honourable. As a part of Arthur's government's agenda, he dedicated much of his work as Prime Minister towards advancing Caribbean regional integration, included by spearheading the creation of the CARICOM single market and economy. In 2001, with the signing of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, Arthur was appointed Professor of Practice in Economics of Development at the University of the West Indies, KPhil, on the 1st of November 2018. He was the 3rd Professor of Practice at the UWI KPhil campus. Further on this timeline, we observe that in 1993, the Right Honourable Professor Owen Seymour Arthur was appointed the Parliamentary Opposition Leader, and upon his party's decisive victory in the September 1994 elections, he assumed the position as Prime Minister. He is now the head of the Cabinet and the leader of the ministers in the executive branch of government. Often in a parliamentary or semi-presidential system, it should be noted that the head of government is either the highest or second highest official in the executive branch of a sovereign state, a federal state, or a self-governing colony, autonomous region, or other government who often presides over a cabinet, a group of ministers or secretaries who led executive departments. Yet from 1966, the head of state under the Barbados Independence Act 1966 is the Queen of Barbados. It's Queen Elizabeth II, who is also the monarch of the United Kingdom and the other Commonwealth realms. The Queen is represented in Barbados by a Governor General. In addition, the Governor General is the representative of the monarch in Barbados and exercises most of the powers of the monarch. The Governor General is appointed for an indefinite term, serving at the pleasure of the monarch. After the passage of the Statute of Westminster in 1931, the Governor General is appointed solely on the advice of the Cabinet of Barbados without the involvement of the British government. In the event of a vacancy, the Chief Justice serves as officer administering the government. The current Barbadian monarch and head of state since the independence of Barbados on the 30th of November 1966 is Queen Elizabeth II. Julie Ann Arthur, née Price, born 1966-1967, is the widow of the former Prime Minister of Barbados, Owen Arthur, who she married on August 12, 2006 in Bridgetown. The couple enjoyed their honeymoon in Birmingham, England. They have one daughter whose name is Leah. Arthur was a recipient of the Order of Jose Martini of Cuba. Owen's timeline is solidified by comments injected into the discourse by his peers. The Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonsalves of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, said, I quote, "He was not only the chief architect, advocate, and intellectual guide of the CARICOM single market and economy, but was deeply committed to making our union in the Caribbean more perfect and the best practicable institutional, political, and economic expression of our Caribbean civilization." End quote. Omar Davies said that there was a view held among Jamaicans that Owen Arthur was a full Jamaican who happened to have been born in Barbados. Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holness has described Arthur as a person who was passionate about his country. I quote, "Today I pause to pay my respects to a man who served Barbados and the Caribbean with distinction, former Prime Minister of Barbados, Owen Seymour Arthur. I am truly saddened by his passing." End quote. Holness said in a message on his Twitter page. St. Lucia's Prime Minister, Alan Chastanet, extended deepest condolences to Barbados on the death of Arthur. I quote, "Our heart goes out to his wife and daughters and his family and friends and to the government and people of Barbados." End quote. The Caribbean Community Secretary General of CARICOM, Irwin Lacroix, said the entire Caribbean community mourns the passing, I quote, "ardent regionalists," end quote. Grenada's Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Mitchell, in his tribute, referred to Arthur as his, I quote, "close friend and colleague." Barbados and the Caribbean has lost a great son. He was one of the brilliant and best political minds of the region, a brilliant economist as well. I had a tremendous respect for his insight into political and economic issues. End quote. Prime Minister of Dominica, Roosevelt Skerrit, praised Arthur for his contribution to the socio-economic development of Dominica, describing him also as a regionalist who fought for the betterment of the 15-member regional integration movement, CARICOM. Caribbean diplomat Sir Ron Saunders praised Arthur for his love and commitment to the Caribbean. An excerpt of leader of the Barbados opposition, Bishop Joseph J. S. Adderley stated, I quote, beyond the loss to his wife, children, and extended family, the passing of former Prime Minister the Right Honourable Owen Arthur is certainly a tremendous loss to this country and region. End quote. An excerpt of Barbados's 8th Prime Minister, the Honourable Mia Ama Mortley QCMP EGHOR speech as she paid tribute to Mr. Arthur. I quote, his genius was to see the big picture and to distill the issues with absolute clarity. In essence, he would set a line of march that most would willingly follow, and not simply because they believe in Barbados, but because his views on policy and strategic development were often rooted in sound principles, but also in the interests of ordinary Caribbean people. Now, more than ever, we, his successors in regional leadership, have a solemn duty to the memory of Owen Arthur to build upon and finish the task he helped to start. Maybe this passion for the Caribbean was best reflected in his love of Jamaica. End quote. Owen's timeline also highlighted the differences and similarities between Sir Lloyd Erskine Sandiford, KAPC, and himself. Of note, here are some of the similarities between Sir Lloyd Erskine Sandiford, KAPC, and the Right Honourable Professor Owen Seymour Arthur. Mr. Arthur lectured in the discipline of economics at the University of the West Indies in 1984. Sir Lloyd E. Sandiford lectured at the University of the West Indies and the Barbados Community College in economics and Caribbean politics. Sir Lloyd Erskine Sandiford stepped down from politics and handed over the reins of leadership to the late the Honourable David Thompson in 1999. Likewise, in 2008, the Right Honourable Professor Owen Seymour Arthur also stepped down from politics and handed over the reins of leadership to Barbados's 8th Prime Minister, the Honourable Mia Amor Mortley QC MP EGHOR. Sir Lloyd Erskine Sandiford, KAPC, and the Right Honourable Professor Owen Seymour Arthur were educated at Coleridge and Parry School, Harrison College, and the University of the West Indies, Mona, Jamaica. They both served as prime ministers, they both stepped down as opposition leaders, they both won scholarships, and both earned degrees in economics and lectured in economics and our fathers. According to the annals of history, between the period 1994 to 2008, Barbados's 5th Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Professor Owen Seymour Arthur's economic policies significantly cut unemployment and won his party near total control of the House of Assembly. Correspondingly, the South Africa's economy has registered positive economic growth over the past 15 years since the demise of apartheid. However, the formal sector of the growth elasticity of employment over the 1994-2008 period is low, and over a longer time horizon, the marginal growth employment effect is weak, a view espoused by Damara Mahathir, Richard Simpson School of Economics and Finance University of KwaZulu-Natal. The more that I research this topic, I must confess that through the lens of an author, student of film, media arts specialist, licensed cultural practitioner and publisher, it seems that in some ways the Right Honourable Professor Owen Seymour Arthur comported himself like a photographer because he managed his lens to become richer in knowledge academically about culture, economics, politics, social science, and history. This platform exposed him to academia and other opportunities which allowed him to navigate, manage, and apply his skills as a tool in the real world to tell his story through his lens as Prime Minister. Of course, Owen's timeline has a lot to do with his way of life. According to the Gleaner, he devoted always to the further ennoblement of our Caribbean civilization, while at the same time learning from the universalism and well springs of world civilizations is being attributed to the values instilled in him by his parents within the precincts of St. Peter. The fact that he also earned a bachelor's degree in economics and history in 1971 at the University of the West Indies UWI campus in Cave Hill, Barbados, and a master's degree in economics in 1974 at the university's Mona campus in Jamaica makes Owen's timeline a more compelling story. Contextually speaking, Owen's timeline characterizes Barbados's fifth Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Professor Owen Seymour Arthur's story as explicit and implicit because of the fact that he was the longest serving Prime Minister pre and post tenure as Prime Minister of Barbados, coupled with his academic exploits, seems to imply that Mr. Arthur understood what is often confounded by culture, what is anchored in unspoken behaviors, mindsets, and social patterns were presented within a chronological sequence of events along a drawn line enables a viewer to understand temporal relationships quickly. Moreover, it appears that Mr. Arthur applied the rubrics or tenets of timeline for the reason the same is very useful, since he would have documented any type of development, which provided an easy-to-understand history and helping viewers to understand past and ongoing trends in the precincts of international trade. Owen's timeline highlights in a chronological sequence the events which enable us to understand and focus between the period 1994 to 2008. Barbados's fifth Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Professor Owen Seymour Arthur's economic policies significantly cut unemployment and won his party near total control of the House of Assembly. This statement accurately depicts what really happened in 14 years. Was the underpinning of this story validated the fact that this explicit timeline was especially helpful to viewers in understanding past and ongoing trends of Owen's timeline. He was born in 1949, and this number reverse is 1994, the year he served as Barbados's fifth Prime Minister during the period 1994 to 2008. Barbados's fifth Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Professor Owen Seymour Arthur, passed away on the 27th of July 2020, and may he rest in peace. Finally, as an author, student of film, media arts specialist, licensed cultural practitioner, metaphorically through my lens, the positive theory Owen's timeline was juxtaposed against the backdrop of the three distinct stages of film production: planning and getting ready to film, development and pre-production, filming, production, and completing the film and getting it ready to show, post-production, was captured in 8 chapters and framed in ISBN 978-976-96579-53.